Hi crafters! Today we're going to make a spooky card with Lavinia Stamps that's perfect for Halloween. The best part is, it's not as tricky as it looks. So the first thing that I did is I cut two squares. One is 5 3/4 inches and the other is 4 inches. The finished card will be 6 inches square. Now using some black Soot Distress ink, I'm going to ink blend around the outside of the card. I don't need to worry about putting any ink in the inside middle part of the card because this will be covered up by the smaller square. Now as this is a Halloween card, I'm using a black border around the outside, but of course you could use any color for this. I was inspired by the Lavinia Stamps challenge called All Hallows Eve for this. Now once I'm happy with the border, I'm just going to check it with a smaller rectangle. I'm going to start on my inside rectangle. I'm going to use some carved pumpkin as well as some Crackling Campfire Distress ink, and I'm going to apply them to my media mat. Then using my braying tool, I'm going to apply the ink on the surface. And what this gives you is a nice streaky look. Then I'm going to apply the same colors to my media mat and spritz them with water. And then I'm going to dab them onto my surface so that I get some dots here and there as well. And I'm going to use my embossing heat tool just to heat my inked background in between applications so that the colors don't get too muddled together. Now because I'm using distress inks for this, I have to be very careful as they are translucent. And so if I put a lighter color behind, it may not necessarily show up. If you prefer, you can always use distress oxides, which layer a lot easier. Now I will use one oxide just to add a finishing touch in here, some Spiced Marmalade, and that way I can put the lighter orange on top of the darker orange, as this is an oxide. And I'm going to keep repeating this until I'm happy with the background. Now this of course is one of Tim Holtz's techniques, so if you haven't already, you should check out some of his videos because they're very informative and a lot of fun to watch. So now I'm going to apply the Lavinia Stamps, and this is the little dragon here in the corner, and I'm going to use one of the Lavinia Stamps techniques and cover this stamp with a mask for the moon. So I've already die cut the moon shape, a little circle, and as you can see I've used it several times already, and I'm going to cover the stamp and then apply some of that Crackling Campfire around the mask. This will create a highlight area so that my stamp and the moon will really stand out on the card. I prefer to do this with a finger dauber because it's a smaller application and I can get into the detailed areas. Now once I'm happy with that, I'm going to remove the mask and then I'm going to stamp my main image. This is the fairy called Zemira. I'm using some VersaFine Onyx Black for this so that she stands out. Now you'll notice that this stamp is a little bit larger than this stamp block, but that's fine because I'm not using the whole image. I'm only stamping the top part of the stamp. Now once I'm happy with this position for Zemira, I'm going to add some skeleton trees around my image. And I'm going to use some Memento, but this is in the rich cocoa, the brown. And I'm going to stamp this around the outside so it looks like there's trees hanging down, as well as some trees on the side there over behind Zemira. So I'm going to keep adding trees to my background until I'm happy with the way it looks. The great thing about this skeleton tree is that you can put two on top of each other and just extend the trunk or draw it in, and you get a really dense looking forest. And it's a little bit spooky, which is perfect for our card. So I'm just going to add a few more trees around the outside of the card, creating a frame, and this will draw the attention towards Zemira. Now you'll notice that one of these trees, you can see the bottom trunk, but don't worry, I will fix this shortly. So now I'm going to apply some ink around the outside of the card, and I'm going to start with the Crackling Campfire, which is that lovely rich red color. And then I will apply some black soot around the outside as well. Now in the finished card, you don't actually see much of the black soot, so you could always skip this step if you prefer. Or you could always add more. It depends how dramatic you want your card to be. So I'm going to use some of that black soot to go around the tree area as well, and that will create the illusion that the tree continues. So in other words, I'm covering up the bottom part of the tree where there was a gap before. So now onto that spooky frame. Here are 3 of my texture pastes. The first one at the top is Frostbite, the purple is Tanzanite Lavender, and the black one is Black Diamond. And the Black Diamond is the one that I'm going to apply. And as you saw in that swatch that I made, I treated them so that they would be 3D and puffy. So the first step really is to apply the texture paste and using the spatula tool, make it uneven and create the texture on the card. And for this, I just went around all 4 corners. Now I do have another card that I'll show you at the end where I just did the top and the bottom. So it depends what effect that you're going for and what you'd like to achieve. Now once I've applied the texture paste, instead of letting it air dry, I'm going to use my embossing gun and I'm going to heat it. This will cause the texture paste to start to bubble, and it will give you that great spooky look. And of course, you can do this with any texture paste that you may have. Now, just one thing to keep in mind, make sure you move your heat tool or your embossing gun back and forth so that you don't cause any of the texture paste to burn. I've done this on a few cards and I haven't had any problems, but just something to keep in mind. So I'm just going to continue going around the outside of the card, and I'm going to heat all the embossing paste until it's all bubbly. Then I'll set this aside for at least an hour or so to make sure it's thoroughly dry before I attach it to the rest of the card. I love the look of this black texture paste, and it looks so different from when I've just applied it through stencils. So using this with the heat embossing gun really opens up a lot of creative avenues. Now once I'm happy with that and it's completely dry, I'm going to apply it to my card base. So I used a 6 by 6 inch card base, and using some double-sided adhesive, I'm going to put the black square on top of this, and I'll just trim off that little white bit on the side there. Then I'm going to put my focal image onto the black part, and I decided it looked better a little bit higher than center. In fact, I decided I'm going to put a sentiment on the front of the card. Now before I do that, I'm going to stamp a sentiment on the inside of the card. Now because this card is quite ornate, it's just going to be a simple sentiment which will be quite versatile. So I used one from My Favorite Things stamp set called Happy Campers. And the sentiment reads, "You put a smile on my face and a song in my heart." And I'm going to use some VersaFine Onyx Black to stamp the sentiment. Now, of course, you could always stamp a Happy Halloween sentiment if you prefer. Now, on the front of the card, I'm going to use some Ideology stickers from Tim Holtz. And this is from the Big Chat. And these are new to me. Here in the UK, it's hard to find ideology things, but they're just stickers that you can place on anywhere on your card or your make. And these two words, beautiful magic, just summed up the front of my card. Now, before I'm happy, I'm just going to fix the sentiment on the inside because I noticed it was a bit blurry. And instead of redoing and wasting the card, I just patched it with a clear sentiment. Now, here's the other card that I created, which is similar, but it only has the frame on the top and the bottom. On this one, I did stamp Happy Halloween inside, and that's from a Lawn Fawn fox costume before and after stamp set. Thanks for joining me today. Be sure to subscribe so that you're notified when I post new videos. Have a crafty day!